All right, everyone. Well, welcome to another Esoterica live stream. Thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out. I would really love to do these live streams, and it's really great to have folks to come hang out and answer some questions and talk about what's going on with the channel and things like that. So it's fantastic to have folks here. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming to hang out. Um, I just realized that I haven't done a live stream now, and I don't know what seems like quite a while. Probably since we did the celebration for the 100K back in November. So I kind of skipped December somehow. I'm not sure quite how I managed to skip December, but we did. And so that said, welcome back. Welcome back. Yeah, I'm gonna be doing these every 3 weeks. As I said, what'll be happening is that we'll be doing 3 weeks of content, and then after 3 weeks of content, I'll skip out and do an episode that's just live, and that gives me kind of a week off, as much as it is a week off. And that allows me to do some other stuff, to do some more research. Allows me to take a breather just a little bit, so I can, recuperate a little bit of my mental energy from producing content. But yeah, these past 3 weeks have been great. I've really enjoyed the content from the past 3 weeks. I really enjoyed making an episode on Hadewijch, which I'm glad really went over well. Unfortunately, a lot of times I'll do episodes specifically about women, and they don't really get much play. They don't really get the same kind of airtime for whatever reason. They don't get the same views as other episodes. But the episode on Hadewijch actually did really, really well, and so I'm really glad that that episode did really well. And yeah, it was a lot of fun to make. I really, really admire Hadewijch a whole lot, and just really am blown away by her by her just her literature, whether you buy the mysticism part or not. But I really enjoyed her literature, and so yeah, we got to work on Hadewijch. And what else? What else did we get to work on? The Heptameron, which was also a lot of fun. I got to work on the Heptameron, which was great, um, and which was really fun. I see some folks in the chat have also gotten some of their episodes of their copies of the Heptameron. So that's really great. Also got a comment in the comments from Joseph Peterson, who's just a real asset in the field of occult studies and things like that. He's done so much work to make this kind of material available. So really, really appreciated getting a really kind comment from Joseph Peterson. I really want to get him on for an interview or a sit down, just because I appreciate him just so much. Um, so yeah, the episode on the Heptameron was a lot of fun, and yeah, and you got to some folks got to take a look at the Digital Vatican Library. There's so much great stuff on there. Um, so I got to do that, and I can't remember what the other episode was. What did we do the other one on? Let me pull it up real fast. The Heptameron and Hadewijch. Even I sometimes forget what in the hell that I'm actually working on. Oh yeah, the one on Kabbalah, the text Orna Erav by Joseph Cordovero. Um, so that was also a really great text to do, and I really, really love I really, really love Moshe Cordovero rather. I really love him and his form of Kabbalah. Not that I have a huge dog in the fight when it comes to various schools of Kabbalah, but I've definitely always appreciated Cordovero's system more than Isaac Luria's, and I can maybe say more about that. Why I think that. Um, if folks are interested, I can't imagine why people would be terribly interested in my opinion about that kind of thing. But I really love Cordovero, and really, really happy to do an episode on the Orna Irav. I'm going to come back, like I said, and do an episode on the Tomer Devora, which is the practical side of how to be a Kabbalist. So you have the how to study Kabbalah, but then also how to live a Kabbalistically informed life in the Tomer Devora. And so I'll be getting back to that text here, and I don't know, in a little while. I'm not sure. So. But yeah, and I have some show and tell for later on in the live stream when folks are interested in that. I have a couple things that are interesting. One about witch hunting. I went down a rabbit hole, a witch hunting rabbit hole, and so I have some interesting kind of semi content about witch hunting. It's a topic that's perennially interesting to me. So I'll be talking a little bit about witch hunting and the price of witch hunting, specifically here later on in the live stream. So stick around for that, and also be telling you a little bit about what I'm reading. Again, I don't try to interject myself too much into the channel, but one of the questions that I actually get a good bit on the channel is, what am I reading aside from esoterica stuff? And I'll go a little bit on a sort of show and tell about sort of the stuff that I'm reading, that if folks are interested in that. So that said, again, thanks for folks for showing up to the live stream, and and let's jump in, take a couple of questions, and see what folks are curious about and have some discussions about. Just as a check, is my audio coming through okay? Is everything sounding good? I have a new laptop and switched some gear around, so I haven't done a live stream with this setup yet, and I just want to make sure that everything is coming through clearly, sounds good, et cetera, et cetera. So you guys let me know in the chat if everything is sounding good, if the levels are all good and all that stuff. All right. So let me jump up and get some questions from folks. Um, um, Lady Longsleeves, you see you have COVID. I'm so sorry to hear that. I always really appreciate you have just such great and such kind comments on the channel, and I really appreciate your comments. I'm sorry to hear that you're sick with COVID. I really hope you have a refuah shlema, a complete healing, and quickly and soon. It's terrible. I hope you get to feeling better soon, and I'm glad the live stream is making you feel better. Um, so I hope you get well soon. I hope you get well soon. Um, let's see here. Let me see some questions. Do I ever get mistaken um, for a chassid? I don't know that I get mistaken for a Hasidic Jewish person too much. I think I blend in with them pretty well. I mean, because I put on a black hat and walk down in Crown Heights or whatever, I feel like I would blend in pretty well. I don't have the payas, so I wouldn't fit in Borough Park or someone like that. But yeah, I think I could blend in well. I've actually spent time in yeshiva, so I know that world a little bit, not grow up in that world or anything like that, but I know that world a little bit, so I could probably fit in kind of. Um, I will say this: I don't get mistaken for a Hasidic person, but I do sometimes get mistaken for a rabbi. Even on the channel, sometimes people will leave comments referring to me as rabbi. Just to be clear, I'm not a rabbi. I'm married to one, but I'm not a rabbi. So I sometimes get mistaken for a rabbi, which will be funny. Sometimes my wife and I will be going to a wedding or something that she'll be officiating, and someone who doesn't know who the rabbi is, all they know it's Rabbi so and so. They'll come up and tap me on the shoulder and, "Hello, Rabbi, how are you doing?" I have to direct them over there. Like, yeah, she's the rabbi, not me. So, and what are my thoughts on Hasidism generally? I mean, Hasidism is a beautiful branch of Judaism. It has its own wonderful mystical tradition. I tend to be much more aligned with the Misnagdim, the opponents. This is a constant sort of funny thing that between Zevi and I. Zevi, as you may know, folks, this is Zevi, the really wonderful host from Seekers of Unity, who's a channel I really recommend you go subscribe to if you're not already. But he grew up in the Hasidic world. I tend to be a bit more on the Litvish, the more Misnag side of that equation, which tends to be more rational and whatever, um, more rational. As much as any of this stuff is rational, but I tend to be a bit more sympathetic to them. So I'm not so much on team Hasidism, but I did study in a Hasidic yeshiva for a little while, so I have a lot of thanks for that. A lot of thanks for that. Um, all right, let me keep scrolling around and see about getting some questions. I'll do my very best to get as many as I can during the live stream, folks. But let me keep looking through and seeing what you guys are asking. Um, um, So did I take inspiration from Zizek's concept of Christ the historical in the Hadewijch video? No, no, it's not really. I don't really think of, he's using hysteric obviously in the psychoanalytic sense, specifically Lacanian sense, but no, I don't think that Hadewijch fits that bill very well. Um, she's a very calculating kind of mystic. This is also true of Hildegard of Bingen. I think more true, really, in many ways of Hildegard. But Hadewijch is very while her experiences are obviously ecstatic and overwhelming, the way that she very carefully curates them shows me that she's very much being very systematic about how she understands her mysticism and how she relates her mysticism back to her deeply Catholic roots. And so, yeah, I don't think of her as being a hysteric in that sense. I think maybe she's neurotic. If you think about the sort of triad, psychotic, pervert, neurotic, I would probably put her more in the neurotic camp of things more than the hysteric one. So, um, yeah, some physicists absolutely love Kabbalah, yeah, and mathematicians as well, and say a lot of physics is hidden there. Have you any thoughts on this? No, I don't think that there's anything about Kabbalah that gets one. There's not one Kabbalah, right? We should just be really clear about that. There are several different schools of Kabbalah, and I don't think any school of physics and any school of Kabbalah line up. I know some people want to, with the Big Bang or something like that, or but I mean, again, there's what we learn about on the lowest popular level of things like quantum mechanics or whatever, and then there's actually what's going on in the math. And frankly, I just I don't know how to say this in a way that doesn't sound super arrogant. And I'm talking about myself here. I just don't trust anyone talking about quantum mechanics who's not also able to do the math. And most of the people who I've seen who talk a big game about the relationship of physics and Kabbalah or whatever, they don't do the math. They're working in a series of very complex analogies and metaphors, and that's very beautiful and very interesting. But the math of quantum mechanics, the math of physics, is what's the truth about it. The analogies we give, the metaphors we give, those are just metaphors and analogies. And so, what matters is the math. And what I find is that when I see people talking about Kabbalah this and math this or whatever, I'm like, unless you can show me in the math that there's some connection. I'm not impressed. I don't really care. So I've never seen that connection, and I don't know of any serious quantum mechanists or serious quantum physicists that go looking to Lurian at Kabbalah to explain how reality works. Um, yeah, so I'm not impressed by not I'm not super impressed by that kind of stuff. I'm not super impressed by that kind of stuff. All right, let's see. Will I be covering the Arbitel at some point? Yes, I will be covering the Arbitel. We'll get to all the classic grimoires at some point. I'll be absolutely getting to all the traditional classic um, the classic grimoires, all of them. So I'm really forward to doing the Sworn Book of Honorius. I'm looking forward to that one a lot. That one's really ancient, really really old. Um, does the Zohar traditionally have talismanic properties? Yes. Yes, it does. In fact, I have a copy of the Zohar downstairs that I think I've shown it on another live stream. That's actually an entire copy of the Zohar printed on microfilm. And the point of it to print it on microfilm, obviously, no one can read it on microfilm without a microfilm reader, I guess. But the point of putting it on microfilm is precisely to have it in your house, so you don't have to have the 25 volumes or whatever of the Zohar. You can have the whole thing in your house on microfilm, and having the whole thing on microfilm, it does the heavy lifting, I guess, of the magical powers of just having the Zohar in your house. And so what it happens, I have a copy of it on microfilm. Actually, I have several copies of it in Hebrew. There's one back on my shelf up there. Um, and yes, it's considered to have talismanic properties. So the book itself is considered to have magical powers. That's a thing. And you can buy it in microfilm. You can literally buy a microfilm copy of the Zohar just to have around. Just to have around. Oh, Zygmunt A. This is the best question. I love this. If you could assemble a D&D group out of 4 occultists and mystics throughout history, who would you want? Who would I want to DM for? This is a great question. I don't know. My God, this is so hard. Definitely have to have Zosimus of Panopolis, right? The alchemist. So definitely want to have Zosimus of Panopolis. Who else from the Middle Ages? Have to get a clerical necromancer of some kind. Whoever wrote the Heptameron, get them on board. It'd be great to have a clerical necromancer. They don't have to play a necromancer, but they need to be at the table. Going a little bit further forward, who else did I want? John D. You have to get John D at the table. He would follow the rules. He would be a stickler. He'd be a mini maxer for sure. I think John D would be our mini maxer. So get John D at the table, of course. He'd be good with the math. We could play old school D&D, AD&D. He'd be good at calculating thecos and stuff. And I got to get a 20th century person. Who would I want for the 20th century person? I'm going to be cliche and say Crowley. I guess it has to be Aleister Crowley. He's so flamboyant. Maybe he could play our bard. He could play the bard. Um, so that would be my answer. That would be my preliminary answer. I need a little bit more whiskey in me or absinthe in me to give a better answer. But this is the kind of thing that I could meditate on for quite some time. Should make an episode about that. That's an excellent question. I really appreciate that. That's hilarious. Someone gave a super chat. Let me make sure to grab their question before um, before I go on. Mark Zima, what do you think about Professor Morton Smith as a scholar reliable? So the short answer is we're there's an episode coming out, maybe a collaboration, about exactly this about this topic. I think he's a reliable scholar. I think it's a pretty contentious argument, but I think he's a reliable scholar, and I think that Jesus the Magician is a really, really important book. Um, I don't know that I buy it. I don't know that I buy that line. I typically think of Jesus as sort of a revolutionary, apocalyptic preacher more than a magician or a magus. But again, magician and magus, these kind of terms are really interesting in how they get used in the first century. But yeah, I think he's reliable but contentious. I think that you could certainly argue with him. You could certainly argue with him. But it's a great book, and hopefully, I'll be doing a joint project with another YouTuber about just this topic at some point soon, but I don't know when. It's a little bit in their court. All right. But thank you very much for the $20 donation. Appreciate that very, very much. All right, good. From Jesus the Magician to getting clerical necromancers at your D&D table. It's fantastic. Only in a live stream, only in an esoterical live stream could you talk about such patently bizarre and wonderful things. Craig Wilson, thank you for the 449 pounds donation. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. I really do appreciate that the donation. Again, folks, these live streams are great. I really appreciate hanging out, and the donation certainly helped to keep the lights on. So I really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Trace Fleeman Garcia, also thank you for the donation. Do I have any? Am I going to do an episode on apophatic theology? Yes, I am. I'm going to do one on apophatic theology. In fact, I want to do an entire episode on that guy, Pseudo Dionysius, assuming he was a guy. We don't know what his gender was. It could have been a woman for all we know. Could have been all kinds of people. We have no idea who the hell wrote that book. But yes, I will be doing an episode specifically on Pseudo Dionysius and apophatic negative theology. I'd like to do one sort of comparatively, both with Maimonides as an example of Jewish apophatic theology, and then Pseudo Dionysius as another. But yes, absolutely, we'll be getting to that. That's a great topic. Maybe I can work with Zevi on that or something. Constellation Pegasus, thank you for your contribution as well to the channel. Is there any evidence of Kabbalah existing in the first temple? If not, when did it begin? No, there's no evidence of Kabbalah existing in the first temple Judaism. We don't really know much about first temple period Judaism, or Israelite religion, I should call it. Actually, we don't know a ton about what went on in that temple, but Kabbalah, as we know it, really began in the 12th century. 12th and 13th centuries, primarily in southern France and in Spain. So Kabbalah really is a medieval European, largely Sephardi development that developed there. So it's primarily there. So there's no evidence of whatever was going on. But there's also no evidence. We don't have much evidence of anything going on in the first temple. We don't really know what happened there. I'll be talking a little bit about Israelite stuff here in just a little bit, actually. But yeah, we don't know a ton about Israelite religion in the first century, or in the time of Solomon's temple, what went on in Solomon's temple. We kind of know a general idea about Canaanite religion, but exactly what happened, what did Israelite Yahwism look like in the first temple period? There's a good bit of debate about what that looked like. We don't have a lot of evidence, and we don't know quite sure outside of the Bible, and the Bible's not always terribly accurate about that stuff. All right, so let me scroll back up and grab some other questions from folks. Um, yeah, someone else actually donated. Wee woo. Would I? Thank you for the donation. Covering esotericism with Eastern religions. I would, except for I don't have any expertise in Eastern religions. It's really important for me as a scholar to be very honest about what I have expertise in and what I don't. I have expertise in the things that I do, and one of the things I don't have expertise is in Eastern religions. What I would love to do is bring on other scholars. I don't imagine esoterica being completely about me and my scholarship. What I would love, excuse me, is to bring on other scholars who have expertise in tantra and other forms of esoteric Buddhism and things like that, Shingon Buddhism, and bring those folks on and have them do episodes for the channel. And so, one of the things I imagine for the future of esoterica is that other people can do episodes of this channel. This is a channel. I happen to be the person on the camera most of the time. I happen to be sort of the anchor for the channel, but I would absolutely want other folks to be able to come in and to do episodes for the channel. Other scholars, other graduate students, other scholars who have expertise. So, and that's the thing I would certainly like to do as the channel develops. So, yeah, I would absolutely love to do some stuff or get some folks in to do some stuff on Eastern or African indigenous esotericism. So, yeah, that's the thing I'd love to do, and that's just a question of getting the channel going, getting it built up, getting it so that I can bring those folks in and pay them something. I don't want anyone to have to work for free. And so that's all about getting the channel built up enough that it's financially able to support getting other scholars in to do that kind of work. So absolutely, I'm interested in it. Absolutely interested in it. All right. Um, all right. Let's see here. Let me see the questions here. Wow, there's so many great questions. Let's see here. Um, all right, let me see where I left off. All right. Would you be interested in doing a video to specifically address paranormal investigations? Sure. I think I'm an open-minded person, I think. Is that true? That might not be true. I might be lying. I want to be an open-minded person, and so I'm interested in parapsychology. I have a parapsychology textbook. I'm interested in it. I'd be willing to hang out with some folks who would do parapsychological investigations or experiments. I'm very interested in the intersection of esotericism and science and the scientific method, and would absolutely be interested in hanging out with folks that do that kind of stuff in order to be again skeptical and critical and also sympathetic to that kind of work. So I'd be very keen to be on a panel of people doing that kind of work. Um, that would be fun. That would be fun. Fun and interesting. Fun and interesting. Um, all right, let me scroll down and get some other questions. What are my favorite descriptions of spirits from the Enochian sessions? Joe Jones. Um, uh, I think the only descriptions I know of are the ones from Dee's diaries. And those are the only ones that I know of. Maybe modern occultists have done other stuff. There might be something in the Vision of the Voice from Crowley or something. Maybe modern occultists have done more to contact these spirits or what have you to investigate. But that's the only descriptions that I know of them. Um, um, but those are the only ones I know of. So I guess they're my favorite. But there could be other ones. Jenny, hey Jenny, Jenny Pendle, are there any modern practicing Bechins out there? I don't know. To my knowledge, the last Bechin died in the 20th century. I think I actually featured her on both the episodes, both Bechin spirituality episode and the episode on Hadewijch. She, I think, was Belgian, and I think she died in the 20th century. I'm not sure exactly when. I don't remember when, but I think she was the last one. I think she was the last one. Now, could there be people restarting Beginhofen, sure, there could be. I can easily imagine there could be pious Catholic women who don't want to become nuns, but who want to live together and serve the community and live a life of chastity and purity and serve the community and dedicate themselves to the task of being a Christian in such a way that they don't want to be officially attached to the church. I could easily imagine that kind of community arising again. And the Beguines produce some amazing spirituality, and if some young people, and again, men could do this too. By the way, they were Bechards just as much as they were Beguines. The Bechards aren't as well known, and they weren't as, what's the right word, raucous, spiritually raucous as the Beguines were. And many of the Bechards got sort of lumped in with the movement of the free spirit, which isn't exactly fair. But yeah, I could easily imagine there being pious Catholics to restart the tradition of the Beginhofen again. That'd be neat. Be neat. Um, am I going to revisit more Klipot material? Yes. In fact, stick around in a minute for show and tell. Show and tell. It's like kindergarten esoterica. But yeah, stick around for show and tell because I have something about the Klipot actually that I want to show in just a little bit and talk about it. So if you're interested in the Klipot, hang out for a little bit more. I'll probably do show and tell around the 45-minute mark, hour mark, after I get some of the questions. And so yeah, if you're interested in the Klipot, I have a cool book for you. Do you happen to know if there are any good editions of Hadewijch in the original Dutch? Yes. Yeah. If you read Middle Dutch, which I don't, you can get copies of Hadewijch both in Middle Dutch and in Modern Dutch translations. They might not be exactly easy to find, and they might not be exactly cheap, but they are available. They are available. They absolutely are available. Let's see. Someone asked about getting grimoire tattoos. I mean, it's your business. I don't know. I wouldn't get any kind of grimoire tattoos. And also, you have to, if you want to get an image from a grimoire, you have to pick which version of the grimoire you get the image from. As you probably know, medieval books are highly unsystematic when it comes to images, and so a sigil of the seal of Saturn or Uriel or whatever, from manuscript to manuscript, they vary quite a bit. And so, if you get one, you have to pick a manuscript, and how in the world you pick the accurate manuscript, I have no idea. So you have to pick one, but that's your business. That's your business. How you pick one is beyond me. Um, oh, Kazune, yeah, thanks. As an aspiring scholar of Japanese esotericism. Yeah, great. Look me up when you want to do an episode on whatever Japanese esotericism, Shingon Buddhism, all that stuff. I'm absolutely down for it. I'm about it. So I'm absolutely about it. So absolutely, that'd be great. All right, let me jump back up to some questions. Ancient Hebrew, Greek. You've learned all those languages. Well, good for you. How much is left to do in the study of esoteric manuscripts? A ton, a ton. Just in Arabic alone. If you just want to work in Arabic, there is a ton of work to be done. Publishing, for instance, the Arab Hermetica. There is so much work to be done translating Arab Hermetica. There are technical Hermetic works. There are volumes and volumes of technical Hermetica in Arabic. These are works on alchemy, astrology, etc., that are just not translated. I don't even know if they're even modern editions in Arabic. They might just still be in manuscripts. And I think one of the only scholars working on that stuff is Professor Liana Seif over in Amsterdam, and she does just amazing work. And so, yeah, you could have a team of people working on that stuff for the rest of your life, and I still think you would have work to do. So, yeah, we need so many more people working in that area. That absolutely. Also, just Syriac. There's a ton of work to be done in Syriac. Yeah, so absolutely. I tell people, don't learn Greek and Latin. Go learn Syriac and Arabic, and do the work of filling in those gaps. There's so much work to be done in Syriac and Arabic. and it's so important. It's so important to get done, and it gets overlooked because of Western esotericism. The truth of the matter is, there's no West or East on a globe, and the East, the Arabic world, as much as it was East or whatever, um, was a huge part of informing so-called Western esotericism. And without because our knowledge of that area is so poor, our upstream knowledge is also going to be just largely problematic, wrong, even, and we're going to have to do so much work to fix that later. And so we desperately need the gaps filled in, and that work done in the Arabic arena is going to be super important. Arabic, Syriac, stuff like that. Um, all right. If I could meet any philosopher or magician throughout history to help further the world, what I mean, I don't know. That's a good question. To fix the world, I don't know. I'm not sure they're terribly good at that. Um, No, maybe I don't know, Paracelsus. He was a maverick. I mean, we need people who think outside the box. I think that part of what makes when science does really well, or when philosophy does really well, it's because you have people who are mavericks really thinking outside the box. And there's probably no one thinking further outside the box in many ways than Paracelsus. I mean, he kind of burned the damn box down. Um, and so, he burned the works of Al-Kindi or the canon of medicine or whatever. So I think in many ways, what we need are mavericks, people who really can think very creatively, very aggressively, and really do the damn thing. And Paracelsus was a doer of the damn thing, if there ever was one. So yeah, maybe I vote Paracelsus. And who would I want to have a drink with? Who would it be a fun person to have a beer with from the history of Western esotericism? Not Edward Kelly. Edward Kelly got drunk one time and tried to kill a guy. I don't want to be drinking with Edward Kelly. He might try to kill me. Uh, who would be a fun person to have a drink with from the esoteric world? Meister Eckhart. I bet Meister Eckhart would be a fun guy to have a beer with. He wrote this whole thing about eating and drinking, and I'd really like to sit down with him and have a beer. And monks drink good. They're good drinkers. So I bet he could drink me under the table. So it'd be fun to have a beer with Meister Eckhart and talk about the birth of the birth of the sun and the soul. That'd be a good conversation. That'd be good conversation. Um, all right. Neil, thank you so much for your donation. How has your work on esotericism influenced your philosophical views, if it has at all? It's a good question. I don't know that it has very much. I do know that even if my work in esotericism in a substantive way, that is to say, the content of these that necessarily affected my worldview, which I don't know that it has too much, or if at all, really. But what I do gain from esotericism is a very strong sense of awe and wonder about the world. That, and I think I've said this in other podcasts and other kinds of things, is that part of what I really appreciate about occult stuff, that's real smart sounding, occult stuff, occulty stuff, and occultists is a long-standing idea that the world is not as it appears, that there's a hidden aspect of the world. That's literally just what the occult is. And that impulse has always struck me as fundamentally right. The world isn't the way that it appears. And that's always given me a sense that one should be investigating it, one should be thinking deeper about it, one should be digging deeper. And insofar as one can dig deeper, I feel like that's a really great impulse. And I think that nothing compels a person to think more deeply than the occult impulse, the idea that there's something fundamentally down there or out there or whatever. The truth is out there. Um, and that impulse I deeply appreciate in the world of the world of occult and the world of occultists. And so that probably has really inspired me and continues to inspire me. So I don't know that in a substantive way I've gone to John Dee and John Dee's affected my worldview, or Aleister Crowley or something. Certainly not Aleister Crowley. Um, but um, but I think that impulse, the idea that there is something about the universe that is simply not apparent, that impulse I think has been there with me for quite some time, and and I think that I get that from my interest in my academic interest in esotericism and the occult. Um, all right. Yeah, thank you, Day Tripper, for the donation. And Tinkering for Time. Yeah, thank you so much for your donation. Thank you for your kind words. Yeah, it's man, academia is not a fun place, and I'm glad to be in it at some level and also be out of it at some level too. Which is again part of what I love about doing esoterica. So thank you. Um, so Jay Orr, what in the study of esotericism should be explored further? Should other fields get involved? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the future of academia, as much as there is a future of academia, as long as they continue to make themselves irrelevant, then they're not going to be much of a future. And they, as long as they make themselves irrelevant and ivory tower and completely inaccessible to normal people and expensive as all hell, no one's going to be interested in what they have to say. But insofar as they have a future, that future is definitely going to be interdisciplinary. Um, and so I absolutely agree that that the intersection of neuroscience, the intersection of chemistry and alchemy, of neuroscience and meditation, just studies of things like how does practicing magic affect your brain? Um, that's a really important question. What does the brain of a person who does daily ritual work look like? I think that's a fascinating question. And it should be studied. I do think that there are neurological, positive psychological uptakes for people who have daily ritual practices. That seems obvious to me. Now, it's obvious to me, but I don't think it's been significantly studied. And so I feel like that's just a fascinating question that needs to be investigated from an empirical point of view. So I think this is a really, really important thing. And that's part of why I'm interested in part of how I approach my work. Most people who work in academia primarily or work in the academic study of esotericism are primarily historians. I'm a philosopher, as pretentious as that sounds. I'm trained in philosophy. I'm PhDs in philosophy. And so, while insofar as I'm trained in philosophy, I think of the way that I approach esotericism as uh, as intersection or as a interdisciplinary field between philosophy and esotericism, Western esotericism, whatever. And so that's my link, right? I try to focus on the philosophical side of esotericism. And so, yeah, I think that insofar as academia has a future and academics have a future, it's in doing interdisciplinary work, and I think that that's going to be super important. So yeah, I'm all about that. Oh, Dana Trail's in the room. I see Dana Trail trolling with his what's my bench, bruh. Good question, Dan. I was at the gym yesterday benching. Um, I bench just a little over my body weight, so I'm about 175. So I bench about 180, 185 on a strong day. Um, so yeah, I'm not a super heavy lifter. I don't have huge guns or whatever. I'm not gonna be able to take you to the gun show. But if I can bench my body weight and then change body weight and change, I'm not super sad about that. Of course, Dana Trail folks, the Modern Hermeticist, a wonderful channel. Folks, if you're a subscriber to my channel, you've not checked out Dana Trail, who's an excellent, amazing translator. He has the channel, The Modern Hermeticist. He put out some really great content. One of his latest videos is an episode on the Kabbalion, and it's a fantastic episode. So if you haven't checked out Dana Trail's translation of Picatrix, also check that out, and also his channel is fantastic. So um, yeah. Um, Hey, Michael Ocon, how you doing, brother? It's been a while. I was on Michael and his brother's podcast about a year ago or so. It's uh, it's great to see you. Yeah, I got to write a book called Kabbalah. Yeah, I think I have a lot of made up words for this channel, neologisms. When you call them neologisms, it doesn't sound like you just made up a bunch of crazy words, but yeah, it would be cool to do an episode on music and music and esotericism, especially Led Zeppelin and Tool. I have a secret hope that out there somewhere, maybe Jimmy Page or the guys from Tool are secretly watching my channel. That would be a great honor if they're like, I wonder what's going on in esotericism. I mean, they might they might be looking on. Yeah, I've heard about this Kabbalion movie coming out. That's coming out. I don't know what I think about that, but No, I do know what I think about that. Oh, the Kabbalion. Um, Amazing which books make impacts. It's always blows my mind which books end up making impacts. Um, all right, let me scroll up a little bit more. Um, yeah, let's me so get some other questions. I know um, some other folks. Let's talk religions here. Hey, buddy. Hey, Philip. Just thinking about you earlier. We should work together on something soon. In fact, I was thinking about emailing you about maybe working together on an episode of about the Arab Hermetica. If you're still around, I'd love to maybe shoot me an email. I'll shoot you one, but I'd love to maybe do a joint episode on the Hermetica Arabica. Be a cool episode to work on together, given your expertise. Let me scroll up and see. I want to get some other questions that aren't just folks from the super chats, although of course I obviously really appreciate the super chats as well. Um, um, all right, folks, let me just. What do I think about Yahweh as a God of the wilderness? Is it possible Exodus comes from Edomites somehow merging into Israel? Probably not Edomites, maybe Midianites. Probably Midianites. I tend to be a fan of the Kenite hypothesis myself. I don't think of Yahweh as probably a wilderness deity, probably a mountain deity or a war deity. I'm going to be doing an episode actually in the next couple of weeks, months, sometime soon about the origins of Yahweh. And I tend to think that this is probably a Sinaitic deity, and that deity probably was a war slash mountain deity. I'll be coming back to that. Yes, so look for an episode soon on the origins of Yahweh. That episode is going to be not controversial at all. Let's hold my beer time for that one. So we'll do that. Can women be Orthodox? Can women be rabbis in Orthodox Judaism? Kinda. Kinda. There are in the very progressive Orthodox world, which exists, by the way, there are women called Maharats, which are basically women rabbis. They don't get to be called rabbi, but they are Maharats, and there are some, I think it's Chovave, that Minsum provides them with smicha, insofar as it is smicha, or they see it as smicha. But yeah, there are absolutely Maharats. Now, that's in the liberal side of the Orthodox world. You're not going to go to Bnei Brak and find a woman rabbi, but at least in the liberal Orthodox world, that is a thing that does exist. Question: are you familiar with the works of Gilles Deleuze? Yes, I almost wrote a dissertation on Guattari, so yes, I'm pretty familiar with Gilles Deleuze. Has it changed or influenced my understanding and nature of the mystical experience, and how? Not really. Not really. Should I say something like rhizome, body without organs, schizo, something? Yeah. Yeah. No, not really. I like. I take seriously Deleuze's. That's how I say this. I like Deleuze. I like difference and repetition. You may say this. I like difference and repetition. I think difference and repetition is an important book, very very important book in the history of philosophy. I think Anti-Oedipus and The Thousand Plateaus are not. And I think they're not important because they're basically an attack on Lacanianism. And insofar as you're not an Orthodox Lacanian, why should you care what renegade Lacanians say about Lacan? So it's one of these weird things where I feel like a bunch of people have a dog in the fight with Deleuze or Guattari when they shouldn't. I just don't understand why they would. And they're famous or whatever because everyone sort of apes them. But I don't know. I'm not that impressed. I just don't find them to be that important in that way. But I like Guattari a lot. I think Guattari was a genius. Like I said, I almost wrote an entire dissertation on I almost wrote my dissertation on Guattari, just him, which I really appreciate him a lot. I really do appreciate him a lot. Let's see. So Jorge Abraham, what would be a topic you'd want to address, but you're not sure completely fits the scope of your channel? That's a great question. I think one thing I would love to do that doesn't fit the scope of the channel, but I would love to have like another channel to do it on, would be to have extended long form conversation with practicing occultists. So I'd love to be able to sit down with practicing, because I'm not one, right? I'm a skeptic. In fact, I'm quite skeptical, but I'd love to be able to sit down with practicing occultists, a range of folks. So Damien Eccles or Aaron Leach, and there's a range of people, many people. And I'd love to be able to sit down and have curated conversations with them, right? Not interviews, but more like, let's have a conversation about what we have in common, what we don't, and just have a kind of free form conversation, sort of podcast style, with occult practitioners. Because this channel isn't about occult practice. This channel is an academic channel studying um, esotericism from an academic perspective. But I really love conversations with both practitioners. And I think there are super smart, really amazing practitioners out there. Folks like Dot Darling, who I think is just a really smart practitioner of Thelema. And it'd be interesting to sit down with folks like that and begin to have conversations about what exactly their practice looks like, how they developed it, what's their relationship to academia, etc. So that would be a cool thing to do. I just don't think it fits the scope of the channel. So that would be it. Um, it'd be interesting to have those conversations, and also I think it'd be interesting because I could talk to a range of people that I think there's a lot of occult drama. I don't know that, but I'm sure there is. There's always drama in small communities, whether if you're communists or occultists or whatever. It's always drama, and what's interesting, I think, about that is I don't have a beef. I don't have a dog in the fight of the drama. And so it'd be great to be able to sit down with folks from a range of things, even though I don't have a dog, because I don't have a dog in the fight. I wouldn't be part of those beefs, and maybe we could have more conversations about that kind of stuff. But that would be something I'd like to do. But I just don't know if that fits the scope. It doesn't fit the scope of the channel, so I don't know when and if that would happen. But yeah, there's a lot of folks like that, so I would like to do that. So I've seen at points you say you're a historical materialist, which I am. Where does this position the content of the mystical experience relation to your understanding of the process of history? So I think there's a weird idea that historical materialists are hardcore reductionists. So be clear here. I'm a historical materialist, not a physicalist, right? So I'm not a physicalist. I think sometimes people conflate physicalism and materialism. I'm a materialist, but I'm not a physicalist. So that means that's to say that I do think ideas are important, and I do think experiences are important. And I do think that ideas can play a role in history. Like they certainly do, and they can and they do. And so I think that mystical experiences can play a decisive role in history. And I don't think that they're explicable solely in terms of economic conditions or material conditions on the ground or whatever. And I say that because I also come from a structuralist school of historical materialism that is very informed by Altizer. And we're not mechanical mechanists when it comes to our understanding of history. So to be clear, I don't think that there's sort of an economic determinism happening in history. I think that's a stupid idea. I can't imagine anyone actually ever believed that, but maybe some people did. And so there certainly are material mechanics that operate, and nothing can happen without them. But experiences and ideas are not reducible to them, to be sure. So I think that people think of historical materialism as economic determinism, which I don't accept. But I think that you can't imagine history working any other way, or at least I can't. People got to eat, stuff like that. All right, let's see what other kinds of questions I have. You guys are have these amazing questions. Favorite esoterica occult theme metal bands? I don't know. Liturgy is pretty cool in that regard. There's a lot of like esoteric sort of themes in there. I think Diatima by Krallis is probably one of my favorite sort of esoteric Platonic records. That's really great. I think one of my favorite metal band names is Abigail Williams, which is hilarious because it's the most unmetal name you could imagine, Abigail Williams, except for when you realize that it's named after one of the young girls accused during the Salem witch trials. So I really appreciate that one, but I don't know. Those are immediately the ones that come to mind. Those are the ones that come to mind. I'm sure there's so many ones. Would you ponder going on Jeffrey Mishlov's show, New Thinking Aloud? Sure. Yeah, I think uh, his he's interesting. I find that I really do appreciate. Again, parapsychology is really fascinating to me. I'm very skeptical of it, but yeah, I would be interested in hanging out with Jeffrey Mishlov and talking about you know this academic study of esotericism and um, and doing that kind of work. That will be great. And there are some interesting things. There's a relatively famous article that came out some years ago in a peer-reviewed journal that showed that there are some psi data that shows that it is beyond statistical insignificance, i.e., that it is statistically insignificant. It'd be cool to talk about that article in depth. I'd need to dust off the cover of my regression analysis, but uh, and check that out. But that'd be interesting to see. Be interesting to see. Um, but yeah, if anyone knows Jeffrey and his channel, let him know. I'd be happy to come on. It'd be great. Um, let's see. Are there Judaic Kabbalistic schools have their own traditions and practices in regard to exorcism? Yes, we know a good bit about exorcisms in the 17th century. Jewish exorcisms really began again in the 17th century. Kabbalistic exorcisms, the first ones being done by Chaim Vital. Um, So we do know a little bit about them. If you want to learn more about them, I have a whole episode about them, actually. So you can check that out if you want. It's about the Dybbaks and stuff like that. So feel free to take a look at that. But yep, we know a good bit about them. A good bit about them. All right, scrolling down, folks. Wow, so many great questions and comments. Um, let me see. Wow. All right. I'm really behind. This is hilarious. Pythagoras. Yeah. So, Mr. Sardonicus, question: you've mentioned that academia has long turned its nose up to the history and cultural significance of esotericism. Is that still the case? It's slowly changing. I think it's slowly changing. I think I've said this before. This is my constant complaint, so I'll complain again. It's not just that academia has sort of not taken esotericism seriously. It's that academia doesn't really take religious studies that seriously. Now, it took the Bible pretty seriously for at least a little while, but religious studies departments in general are just, if they exist at all, they're terribly underfunded. And and insofar often as esotericism is going to get a place at the table, it's either going to be in history departments or it's going to be in religious studies departments. And just getting a religious studies department at all is really difficult. I mean, and I've said this before, I live in southeastern Michigan. I live in Detroit. And Detroit has one of the most religiously diverse populations in the country in many ways. And the largest urban institution here, the University of Wayne State University, where I teach at, there's no religious studies department. None. I've even offered to help start one, and they won't hire me to even start one. There's no interest. And if there is interest, there's no money. And so you have a situation where religious literacy is probably very bad in this country. It is very bad in this country. And there's also no institutional interest in starting religious studies programs, much less doing esoterica. So it's an endemic problem that has more to do with, I think, a disinterest in religious studies in a general way than it has to do even with getting someone into esotericism. Because if you're going to hire someone to do esotericism like me, where are you going to put me? In the philosophy department? That doesn't really work. Or maybe it does and it doesn't. So it's just a mess. It's a mess. I don't know how it's going to change either, because it seems like it's going the opposite way. Religious studies programs are getting cut more and more and more, and it's quite terrible in that regard. All right. Um, let's see. Um, what is the most surprising or interesting things you've come across in your esoteric philosophy studies? What's the most interesting or surprising thing? One thing I think is interesting is how much of a black market there is for rare occult books. You wouldn't, I mean, you would think this, but there's a huge black market for rare and occult books. And I don't mean like rare and occult books like paperback books that are 100 years old. I mean grimoire manuscripts. So there's a huge underground black market, not huge. There's an underground black market for that kind of stuff. So that's an interesting thing. Um, I think what's also interesting about studying esotericism is realizing how big of the impact it had, um, how big of an impact it had, and how that impact is often overshadowed. Um, for instance, if you take a philosophy history of philosophy course, you will learn all kinds of stuff, but you will never study the most influential books in philosophical history. For instance, you'll never study the theology of Aristotle. It had a huge impact in the Middle Ages, a huge impact in Islamic philosophy. It just we now know it's basically Plotinus, and sort of dressed up, but this had a massive impact. You'll just hardly ever read Plotinus. And so what's interesting, what I find interesting about studying esotericism is realizing all the things that had a huge impact, right? That now just basically don't get studied at all. So that's fascinating to me that we would forego studying them for whatever reason. And if you go asking people, about the history of philosophy, even academic history historians of philosophy, and be like, "Hey, we should study. Let's talk about the impact of Proclus." They don't care. There's very little interest in that kind of stuff, and so you can easily get a PhD in philosophy. I got a PhD in philosophy, and I never was required to study Neoplatonism ever. It's as if philosophy went pre-Socratics to the Hellenistic philosophers, and then the Middle Ages kind of happened, and then Descartes popped up, and then there's all this post-structuralism, and this constant focus on post-structuralism is a waste of time, largely. Not completely, but the crazy focus on it that we have is largely, I think, a disproportionate use of time. And the Middle Ages and the Middle Ages and late classical philosophy just get thrown under the bus, and it's a complete mistake. It's a complete mistake, I think. So my soapbox: the importance of Neoplatonism and medieval philosophy is very important. I'm sure Dan out there, Dan, I'm sure hopefully you agree with me. Um, hopefully you agree with me. Um, Almost show and tell time, folks. I'm looking at the time. In about 4 minutes, we'll do some show and tell. As ridiculous as that sounds, it's like Mister Rogers' esotericism. It's great. Um, um, all right, let me scroll down. I know I'm way behind, folks. I'm sorry. It's just so hard to get all the questions in. Let me start from the bottom and move my way up. Maybe try to grab some more recent ones. Um, I did not read Voucher's article. That's fascinating. I'll have to take that look at that. I miss that guy. He and I really enjoyed studying with him. He's just I really, really like him, Wouter Hanegraaff. Hopefully, I'm going to get over to Amsterdam, and maybe this spring, I hope, maybe, or early summer, and hopefully I'll get to see him. I haven't seen him in like a long time since graduate school. So, um, have I ever had a mystical experience? Yes. If yes, it's a good flow chart. Can you share details of the experience and maybe what your insights? I didn't gain any insights. Um, I know that's kind of deflationary. Sorry, I tend to be deflationary. I did not gain any insights, but it was a standard mystical experience. Is that a thing? Standard mystical? Yeah, it was like the oneness with all reality thing. It was that. I've had it. I've had that experience both through meditation practice and through the use of psychedelic drugs, which I think mystical experiences under the influence of psychedelic drugs are just as important and just as valuable as ones had regular, whatever. Um, Psychedelic drugs have obviously played an important, or intoxication has played a key role in the history of religion and civilization. And so yeah, but I've had those experiences. I didn't gain any insight from them. Again, I'm sort of a Philistine when it comes to this stuff, but I didn't gain any insights. Because also I don't even really believe there is an underlying unity of things. I think things might just be messy down there. I don't buy that there's an underlying unity. I kind of look at what we know about physics and stuff like that, and basically think, yeah, there's no one. It's just a mess down there. That's why I tend to be a little bit more on the Deleuzian track when it comes to that kind of thing. It's just sort of difference, and that's it. Just difference. So, uh, ooh, someone mentioned sun. I can hear bass lines in my head now. I can hear bass lines shaking my brain. Um, All right. Oh, some dude. Thank you for for the donation. Um, Dybbuk, relative to Dybbuk and perhaps Swedenborg, you're familiar with more modern researchers, Thomas Zinzer, Jerry Marzinski, or John Avery? No, I don't know any of those people. I'll have to look them up. I'm sorry. I don't know anything about any of those people. I will have to look them up. I will have to look them up. Um, all right. I know there's a lot of other questions. I'm going to try to come back to them, but I want to do a little bit of ridiculous show and tell. So, as I said earlier, I'm really interested in the sort of the material history of esotericism. This is a thing that like infinitely interests me. It's not just sort of what people believed or what the ideas were, but also how did these ideas come into being in reality. And one of the things I've been interested in for a long time are the witch hunts. The witch hunts are just perennially interesting to me for lots of reasons, both personal and academic. And part of what's fascinating to me about the witch hunts are obviously the victims of the witch hunts, but also the witch hunters. And I think part of what we do poorly is that we focus a lot on the victims of the witch hunts for obvious reasons. They should obviously have their day in the sun, and we should sympathize with them and recognize that as a great crime that it was. But I'm also really interested in what does the other side of that equation look like? What did the witch hunters look like? What happened in the mind of the witch hunters? What happened in the mind of the people that did this kind of crime? Right? What do these people look like? And one of the questions I was wondering is, what did it cost to be a witch hunter? Like, if you wanted to become a witch hunter, and now I'm literally thinking of Atan Shea, who does the Witchfinder General. What would it cost to have been a witch hunter? And one way of answering that question is asking this question. So this is my copy. I don't know if the thing will show. This is my copy of Malleus Maleficarum. This was printed in Venice in 1574. So this is the first Venice edition, printed in 1574, and this is the second wave of printing of Malleus Maleficarum. So folks, I'm sure know this is the book that you would want if you're going to become a professional witch hunter, right? This is the book that you want in your hands. I've done episodes on them. I've done a whole episode on Malleus Maleficarum. And so what would it take to get this? This is a book you need, right? If you're going to become a witch hunter, in many ways, this is the book you're going to have to pick up. You're going to have to go to the book market and pick this book up because this is how you become a witch hunter. So I got wondering to myself, if you were living in when the Malleus Maleficarum were first published, right? So in 1586, 87, or yeah, 1487. So a little bit before this volume. If you wanted to go to the book market and then buy the Malleus Maleficarum when it first came out, first edition, you were there and you wanted to buy a copy of the Malleus, how much money, what would this cost you? And so I went down a rabbit hole, as you can imagine, go down a rabbit hole. So let's imagine what this would cost. Well, we know how much it would cost. We actually know exactly how much it would cost. It would cost exactly, right? If you wanted to go to the bookstore in 1487 and buy a copy, it would cost you 12 of these. It would cost you 12 of these. This is, I don't know how close I can get it to where it'll focus or not. It's probably not going to focus. Let me see if I can get it even closer. It's not going to focus. At any rate, this is a Weissfinning, right? This is a Weissfinning, a white penny, right? So this was minted in Cologne, same area that the Malleus Maleficarum was published. This was minted in 1456. So this is an actual vintage Weissfinning from Cologne, minted in 1456. This would have been in circulation when the Malleus Maleficarum was published in 1487. So how much did the Malleus Maleficarum cost? We know it cost 12 Weissfinnings. It cost 12 of these. So if you wanted to become a witch hunter, the gate to becoming a witch hunter was 12 Weissfinnings, right? 12 of these. So I have one, I need 11 more. Now, when I got to asking myself, right, if I were to go to the bookbinder and buy a copy of Malleus Maleficarum, how much would this cost now? How much would a copy of Malleus cost now? How much would it cost now? Well, I did some math, right? I did some math. I did some economics. I did some analysis of this stuff, and this is what I came up with. And anybody who's versed in economics can correct me. So we know that Malleus Maleficarum, when it was first published, cost 12 Weissfinning, right? Cost 12 of these white pennies. Now, we know that 18.5 Weissfinnings was equal to 1 gold florin. They actually pegged the Weissfinning to the gold florin. The gold florin was the standard piece of currency at this time. So, if it were worth 1 gold florin, so we know that 18 and a half Weissfinnings was equal to 1 gold florin. We know that 1 gold florin was equal to 120 soldi, right? So soldis were the standard unit of silver coinage in Italy in the 15th century. The soldi was sort of the universal piece of currency at that time. The florin was, but the florin was such an expensive piece of currency, no one used it. It wasn't really used in daily practice. So if we have 120 soldi, right, we now know that 12 Weissfinning is roughly equivalent to about 77.8 soldi. So we now know, right, from doing a little math, that if you want to buy a copy of the Malleus Maleficarum when it first came out in 1487, you would need 12 Weissfinnings, which is equivalent to 77.8 soldi. Now, how much is that? Right? That doesn't tell us how much it will cost in modern money. Now, as you probably know, trying to convert anything from medieval money into modern money is just a nightmare. This is a nightmare. But this is my rough estimate. We know from actually one of Da Vinci's notebooks, which is cool because Da Vinci's living around this time. We have from one of Da Vinci's notebooks a list of all the things that he had and their value. We also know from other notebooks of the time, we have a good idea about how much labor cost and this time, right? Now, labor prices in the mid 15th century are pretty high, but again, this is sort of gives us an idea about what we generally know. So, if 12 Weissfinning is worth 77.8 soldi, we know that at the time in the mid 15th century, hiring a master carpenter cost you between 15 and 18 soldi. So, if you wanted to hire a master carpenter, not a regular carpenter, a master carpenter, we know that will cost you roughly 15 to 18 soldi. Well, here it comes, folks. Here's the number. If you do some basic math, right, some division and stuff, what do we get? Well, we would say that if it costs between 15 and 18 soldi, you get an average of 16 soldi or change. So that means that we could hire for the value of the Malleus Maleficarum, the Witch Hunter's Manual, we could hire a master carpenter for about 5.20 days, 5.18 days, right? So we know we can hire one for 5.18 days. So if we know that the value of this book, right, at least the first edition, which is worth about $100,000 now, but we know that if we have this, we know that that would be worth about 5.18 days of a master carpenter's labor. Well, how much does it cost to hire a master carpenter now? Turns out we know it's about $144 an hour. So a master carpenter, not a regular carpenter typically averages out about $30 an hour. A master carpenter is about $144 an hour, American dollars an hour now. So that gives us our number. What's the number? $720. So if you wanted to become a witch hunter in 1487, if you wanted to walk into a bookshop, buy a copy of Malleus Maleficarum, and go out to the business of hunting witches, it will cost you the modern equivalent of about $720. That gives you a sense about how expensive these books were. And yes, they were all published by Brill, apparently, in the 15th century. So this is a rough estimate, right? I'm not an economist by any stretch of the imagination, but I have some good data about this stuff. It seems like Malleus Maleficarum, when it first came out, was extremely expensive, about $720, equivalent of about $720. But it was good business, though. As you probably know, witch hunters, if they were successful, i.e. murderous, they could make a good living. And so this is an interesting kind of analysis about how much witch hunting. So this is to get you an idea that when a person wanted to become a witch hunter, if they wanted to get a copy of Malleus Maleficarum and then operate out of that book, it's going to cost them somewhere in the neighborhood of a modern $720. So I'll go through my math one more time so folks can check it in the comments and tell me how wrong I am. But we know that in 1787, it cost 12 Weissfinning. We know that 18.5 Weissfinning was equal to one gold florin, which was equal to 120 Italian soldi. So that means that 12 Weissfinning is equal to 77.8 Italian soldi, silver soldi. A master carpenter is between 15 and 18 soldi a day. So that means if we do some simple division, 5.18 days. And if we convert that roughly to modern wages, we get $144, right? We get $144 an hour per hour. So that gives us a rough estimate that we're talking about $720 for a copy of Malleus Maleficarum in modern money. Now, again, those kinds of estimates are always very hard to do, but I think that gives us a rough idea. And I've actually checked it against other metrics, and it actually comes out somewhere between this and somewhere about this. So that's roughly what I came out with. So if you've ever wondered, right? If you've ever wondered what roughly the Malleus Maleficarum will cost and when it was first published, I think the answer is somewhere around the equivalent of 700 American dollars in 2022, which I don't know if anyone is interested in that at all, but I find it infinitely fascinating. Anyone else find the economics of witch hunting interesting? Like, it's just a side of witch hunting that I think has never been studied in depth. But I don't know if anyone else is interested in this kind of stuff. But I don't know. I find it terribly interesting. So at any rate, so that would be interesting. So oh yeah, I think you may be right. I think my math is wrong. Yeah. So folks, so folks can correct me, but I think it's an interesting analysis. All right, let me scroll back up and get some more questions. On my other show and tell thing, someone asked about, it would cost a lot more actually. Yeah, my math is wrong. You're right. It would come out to be a bunch more. Hold on. What, 144? I guess it depends on how long they work, but yeah, it would come out to be a good bit more. All right. So, other thing I wanted to say, show and tell wise, someone mentioned earlier the clipote, and I can see in the chat that folks have been talking about the clipote. Why are people so interested in the clipote? Like, I don't understand what in the world is so interesting about the clipote. People are infinitely interested in like monsters and evil stuff. About the clipote or whatever. At any rate, the clipote are somewhat interesting. I think that for people are, I don't know, for reasons that are bizarre. But at any rate, one of the things interesting about the clipote is that all of most of the stuff on the internet that I've read about the clipote is complete gash, just because people don't read actual Kabbalistic books about them. But if you're interested in an actual Kabbalistic book about the clipote, the most important of those books about the clipote is this one. Right? I don't know if folks can see this, right? This is probably the most important book about the clipote that actually has a legitimate book about the clipote that's ever been written. This is the Sefer Karnaim, the Book of Horns. The Book of Horns. In fact, this is an antique copy minted. I'm still thinking about coins, printed in 1850. So this is an 1850 edition. And what this book is basically is a summary of all the different clipote that exist, and an analysis of the clipote with a running commentary. So just to pick out a typical page, let me see if I can find a good version of the clipote. Let's see. Yeah, so you can see at any rate, I'll just pick out a random page, but you can see that this is the top part, right? You can see on this side. Let me find a better page. Actually, that's too much commentary. That's not true. You can never have too much commentary. It's impossible. So here is a good page of the book. So the top part of the book is the Sefer Karnaim, the Book of the Horns. This is the book on the clipote, and this is the commentary. The Sefer Karnaim itself is incredibly difficult to understand, and so there's a very famous commentary that comes along with it to help you understand the nature of the clipote. This is the most and the only real No, it's badly out of focus. This is the most sophisticated and the longest treatment of the nature of the klipot in Hebrew, in the Kabbalah. Um, it was published first in the 18th century, or at least printed in the 18th century, written before that, obviously. But for people interested in the klipot, you have to learn to read some Hebrew. But this is the major work on the klipot. I'm going to come back to. I'll probably do an episode on this book at some point, but I'd love there to be an academic translation of it made. There is no modern translation of it made, to my knowledge, or translation to English. But this is the most systematic treatment, authentic treatment, historically, kabbalistically informed, not people making up stuff on the internet. Actual version of a book on the klipot that exists. You can buy modern editions of this. You don't have to buy a version from 1850. I just happened to found this one that I really wanted to get because I like these old books. Obviously, I collect old books. But if you want to copy a book, really the only significant authentic book about the klipot that's just dedicated to the klipot, it's again the Sefer Karnaim, the Book of the Horns, which is a perfect name for a book about the klipot. Just an absolutely perfect name for a book about the klipot, the Horned Book. You could even call it. Now it's all bright all of a sudden. So at any rate, so that is an interesting book about the history of the klipot. So let me jump up and get some more questions. Oh, I see that people are talking about Robert Sefer. Rubbish. That stuff is absolutely gash. This is absolutely nonsense. All right, so let me jump down. Yeah, it's just that stuff is so anti-Semitic. It's just garbage. It's amazing that it manages to get the play it does, but that's why this channel exists. It exists primarily to combat misinformation that you would find on channels like that. Just absolute misinformation. So, all right, let me jump back in and get some more questions and go for a little bit longer. All right, let me grab some questions down below. All right. Let me scroll down to the bottom and then go back up to there. Will you do another podcast of Secrets of Unity, perhaps in Israel in person? Yes, if I was supposed to be going to Israel, Palestine, at some point, and it just didn't work because of COVID. But yeah, absolutely. If I ever get back to Israel, Palestine, I absolutely would love to do to sit down with and just hang out with Zevi. I really love him, and just hang out with him. And we would, be great to do some. Be great to do some of that stuff. Yeah, to hang out and just chat and just maybe go on some adventures. Go in the Judean wilderness and see what we can't find. Maybe we'll find the Ark of the Covenant. If we find that thing, I'm not telling anybody. It's too scary. I wouldn't touch it. All right. Let's see what else. What else? Why are the Abrahamic religions so anti-magic? Every religion is anti-magic. That is what religion is. Religion is just whatever is anti-magic. Every religion is anti-magic. Roman religion is anti-magic. Greek religion was anti-magic. Magic is just the term for what is illegitimate in terms of supernatural practice. So it's not unique to the Abrahamic religions. You could get the death penalty in ancient Rome for practicing magic. So it's not the case that the Abrahamic religions are uniquely anti-magic. It's just that if you practice any form of non-sanctioned supernatural practice, you could get in trouble. And that goes for ancient Egypt. It goes for any civilization. There is no civilization that says, "Hey, you go do supernatural stuff on your own." That civilization just didn't exist. So people forget they burned books in the Roman Empire. They hate there's a famous instance of the astrologers being expelled in the Roman Empire. That's paganism. And so trust me, the pagan world was not any more okay with magic than the Abrahamic world was. That's just a weird anti-Abrahamic bias that exists. The Romans, the Greeks, the ancient Akkadians, we have tons of evidence from the ancient Mesopotamia where they were absolutely, they have an entire ritual, the Maklu, that's practiced on New Year's that's intended completely to kill witches, right? What we would now call witches. And so they had entire rituals that were just meant to literally burn witches alive using supernatural powers, legitimate supernatural powers. And so it's definitely not the case that Abrahamic religions are somehow more or less anti-magic than any other religions. Every religion. In fact, that may be one of the markers of religion in some ways, is that it draws a boundary around what is legitimate and what is illegitimate in terms of supernatural practices, whatever supernatural is. Um, um, have I ever used my esoterica knowledge in my D&D games? Yes, all the time. When I was playing D&D actively, yeah, it's always super saturated with esoterica stuff. I mean, why in the hell would why would I know all this stuff and not use it for Dungeons and Dragons? The most apt thing that it could possibly be used for, aside from making crazy, weird YouTube videos. Um, um, let's see. Have I ever read The Philosopher Schelling? Yes, I have read The Philosopher Schelling. He is interesting. I haven't read him recently, but yeah, he's very influenced by. I mean, he's not so much influenced by Kabbalah directly. He's mostly influenced by Theosophy, Yaakov Burma and Oettinger and people like that. But I'm going to get to them eventually too. Going to get to them too. Is there any correlation between Gnosticism and Tantric philosophy? There's correlations. I don't think there are any causal relationships. There's no evidence of much in the way of philosophical influence between the two. I know that everyone claims that there's all this, pollination between India and ancient Greece, and of course they did make contact via the whole business with Alexander the Great, and people did try. I mean, people did try to make efforts to go over there, and they did meet gymnosophists, or what they called Indian philosophers, but there's no sustained evidence of significant cultural intellectual exchange between the two groups, and not that I've seen. Um, again, yeah, not that I've seen. I've never seen any evidence of the Gnostics or so-called Gnostics being influenced by those guys. All right. Yeah, that would be fun, Jenny, to do some live streaming of some D&D. Maybe I'll do that at some point. Um, maybe I'll do that at some point. Maybe I'll do like I just have such an anathema for playing Dungeons and Dragons on screens that if I want to play a video game, I'd play a video game, but I just have a block against playing Dungeons and Dragons on a screen. But maybe it could be fun. Maybe it could be fun. I have to not be so biased about it, and try to give it an honest shake. But maybe not. Or was Hegel a Hermetic thinker? He was influenced by what we would call Hermeticism, but I don't think of him as a Hermetic thinker. Yeah, I don't think of him as a Hermetic. I think he certainly influenced by some aspects of Hermeticism. I think Glenn McGee does a pretty good job of establishing that. But also, folks seen this absolutely stupid line of reasoning that's appeared recently, where people have argued. It's like, I think right-wing people have argued that communism is inherently tied to esotericism. That it's Hermeticism, that Hermeticism and communism are the same thing. And of course, it's also devil worship or something. I think it's just really fascinating that that you have this connection that somehow because Hegel was mildly influenced by some of Hermeticism, you get the communism, Stalinism is somehow magically Hermetic. I think that's hilarious. I love what people come up with. That just like blows my mind, that people come up with that stuff. But no, there's no connection. That's hilarious. All right. Let me see. I mean, yeah, Zeleny, but yeah, it could be the case that Ashoka's Buddhist mercenary, but we need evidence, right? We need, like, if there were a single Pali word in, or because again, Buddhism is nothing if not technical, and nothing if not about lists. It's the most, at least Theravada Buddhism, it's the most list-driven religion I've ever seen. It's a religion of lists, and there are dozens and dozens of cases where they could introduce a Pali or Sanskrit word, and we have no evidence of that. So again, the question is not was there influence? There could have been. The question is there evidence? And we don't see Pali words. We don't see, I mean, Stoicism is utterly unlike Buddhism. I mean, because they both roughly have the idea of quieting the mind, there's nothing like, I don't know, cataleptic, strong assent to a cataleptic impression. There's nothing like that in Buddhism. And the language of strong assent to cataleptic impressions, which is the way that Stoicism frames how knowledge works for the sage, it's uniquely Greek. And so, if we see something, if we could see a linguistic link or something, we'd have evidence. But you don't really need Eastern philosophy to for Epicurus or Democritus to come up with atomoi kai kanon, right? Atomoi kokenon, just atoms and void. You can just come up with that on your own. And so, yeah, I don't think you need to explain it through any other mechanisms than, Democritus and Epicurus and those guys hanging out talking. Um, but that's my thinking. Yeah, I just don't see the evidence. I don't see the evidence. Um, um, since you play Go, is chess just really boring to you? No, because I'm terrible at chess. I'm terrible at chess. I mean, chess is like the end game of Go, which is where I'm weakest at. I have a relatively good opening and I have somewhat of a good middle game, but I have a terrible finish in game. The end game for me in Go is terrible. Like counting stones and counting stuff. I'm terrible at that, and that's basically what chess is just counting. And so, yeah, I'm not very good at chess, and and I don't want to study chess to get good at it. But so yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not good at chess. I wish I were good at chess. Maybe I could take a bunch of drugs like what's her name on Queen's Gambit and be good at it. I'm not going to try that. Um, what is my theory? What is my opinion of the Gaia channel and their idea of alien intervention with man? I think that's horseshit. I think that all the alien stuff is nonsense. I don't think aliens can reach us. I just don't think that. I think mathematically and what we know about the laws of physics, there's just no way for any aliens to reach us, and there's no way for us to reach any aliens ever. Uh, I just don't think a technology is ever going to emerge that's going to allow us to reach extraterrestrial life, and I don't think that it's possible. I think this is mathematically not a thing, and so I just don't think it's not that aliens have they just can't. I don't think they can visit us. So yeah, and also any apologies for any guy ads that show up when you check out my channel. That stuff is nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. Um, but no, I have no. I'm pretty sure there are. I'm certain there are extraterrestrial life. I just don't think it's possible for us to ever interact. And we're never going to leave our local group. I mean, even if we could travel at some approaching the speed of light or whatever, which we can't, um, we're never going to even leave our local group, which is fine. I don't know why people want to like leave. It's fine around here. Um, any chance of getting some longer hour plus episodes that dig a beat? Nah, probably not. I think after about half an hour, my mind is spent. It's so hard to get content that's really good for more than about 45 minutes, at least for me. So I don't think I'll be doing, maybe live streams like this, where we'll maybe do some study sessions with a book, maybe in live stream format, but not episode wise. I don't think I have, I don't think I have the intellectual athleticism um, to pull that off. Um, let's see. Um, let me see some other questions. Let me scroll up and see. Have I seen any of David Chaim Smith's work on Kabbalah? I have seen some of it, not in person, but I've seen it on his website. It's very beautiful. It's very, very like shockingly amazing. So it's really beautiful. I can't, I can't, I can't probe the depths of the esoteric meaning of it, but it is very impressive. It is very impressive. Um, all right, keep going. All right. What do you think about religion and magic being melded together still? Um, are they being melded together? Is that a thing? I don't know. I mean, maybe, but I don't think they're really being melded together very much. Not at least in my opinion. Let me scroll back down and see if there are other questions. All right, let me scroll all the way back down. Any ideas for episodes with a tier list structure? Yeah, like Buddhism. No, that would be very boring. Yeah, when you read Buddhist texts, they can just be very tedious. They can be very, very tedious. Have you ever tried any of the knowledge you share with us in practical terms? Nope. I have no interest in no interest in trying to be a magician or a necromancer. No, I don't have any interest in trying that. Never have. I've never tried to do any magic, and I don't think I ever. Well, I shouldn't say I never will. Shouldn't speak for the future. Bleeding it there. But no, I have zero interest personally in trying to reach gnosis or achieve anything through magic or whatever. Um, it's interesting that people do, but I don't have any interest in that. Do I think any modern day chemists are alchemists? No, no, because alchemy is a failed theory. I mean, again, I hate to be deflationary, but it's just a failed theory. The theory underlying alchemy, the mercury sulfur theory or the mercury salt sulfur theory of Paracelsus, it just doesn't work. It's just not true. And so anybody who understands anything basic about chemistry knows that you can't transmute anything into anything else without a particle collider. Um, and so yeah, it's absolutely just not. Anyone who knows basic chemistry knows that alchemy can't be true. It simply can't be the case. So I find alchemy interesting, but it's just not true. It's just not a thing. Yeah, the study session things, I would be interested in doing that. I don't know what I would want to study, but maybe the Zohar or something like that. That'd be kind of cool to study the Zohar. Just crack the Zohar open and open a live stream and just start studying the Zohar with y'all. Um, that'd be interesting. I don't know if folks are interested in that. Let me know and I'll consider it. If you just want to have sort of impromptu, we're going to study Yanuka in the Zohar. If folks are interested in doing some quasi scholarly study of something like the Zohar, I'd be down with that. That'd be fun. Give me a good excuse to study the Zohar with y'all. That'll be a hell of a lot of fun. I love that. All right. Let's see. More D&D question. Any favorite bits of esoteric that you found particularly fun or cool in the context of role playing for D&D? I mean, the magic stuff, obviously, right? It's just that there's so much great. I mean, part of what makes magic fun in Dungeons and Dragons, this might be even true in real life, but I don't know from experience. But part of what makes magic fun in Dungeons and Dragons is the limitations on it. Is that you have the ability to do weird stuff, but you can't do anything. And so the limitations are what make magic interesting. What is it? Hegel said that freedom is accepting the reality of limitation. And so of what makes it part of what makes it fun to apply some historical magic stuff to Dungeons and Dragons is looking at what makes magic limited in these historical texts, like what doesn't work and why doesn't it work. And so in those ways, you can sort of incorporate fun stuff into magic to do things like that. So I think that's actually really that's a lot of fun. Also, puzzles. I for my Dungeons and Dragons style, my DMing style is very puzzle driven. I love people solving funny puzzles, weird puzzles, and so magic gives me lots of things to make puzzles out of. So I love solving puzzles in that way, or making puzzles for people to solve. I also like solving puzzles, which is really fun. Let me scroll back up and get a couple more questions. I have about a little while longer to go before I sign off. Yeah, the Pali Canon is great, but it is tedious to read. It is tedious to read. Let's see. But just because something's tedious doesn't make it bad. There's all kinds of tedious things to read that are really, really important. All right. Look at some more questions here. Do I think anyone in the Jewish community finds esoterica offensive? Maybe. Maybe. I mean, I know that when I publish, when I put articles or videos on Kabbalah to the Judaism subreddit, they always get like lots of hatred. Um, they always get lots of hatred, and so I don't know. I think the Haredi people don't like anyone that's not Haredi doing Kabbalah or talking about Kabbalah, which is just sort of silly. But I think most really Orthodox people aren't going to read this. They're going to look at this. I mean, the internet's not kosher. They're not looking at YouTube, so so they're not going to be looking at this stuff. Balance. Thank you for the donation. What do you think of people in government positions of power partaking in rituals like Bohemian Grove? I think that Bohemian Grove stuff's just theater. I think that's just a bunch of rich people getting around doing weird stuff and getting drunk and having sex. Um, I just I don't buy conspiracy stuff at all. I think conspiracies rely on people being consistent and smart, and people are typically neither. I think that the world is basically run by C students, and because the world's run by C students, they're not disciplined enough to be like esotericists or occultists. They're just like goobers. And so the fact that the world's basically run by a bunch of like semi-competent goobers means that I just don't think they're going to be, you know, they're just going to like be out like drinking beer and doing cocaine, having sex with people. So I'm utterly unconvinced that they're conspiracies. That conspiracies are true. I mean, not that there aren't conspiracies. MK Ultra and stuff is obviously real, but I definitely don't think that the people running the world are up to that kind of stuff. Don't think they're up to that kind of stuff. Um, what do I think about the Voynich manuscript? It was a medieval fraud. Um, yeah, I think it was a medieval fraud. I don't think there's any underlying text at all. I think it was a fraud. I think it was a 15th century fraud, basically to make money. So I think that there's no secret text underneath it, and I think basically it was used to. Someone tried to make it to make a bunch of money, and probably they made a bunch of money. So uh, I'm fairly confident that whoever did it to make money, and I hope they made some money. And I'm pretty sure they're laughing in their grave at all the people trying to crack it, because there's nothing crackable. I think mathematically there's nothing crackable, nothing crackable on there, underneath there. I've worked on it for years, and I'm fairly confident. I'm fairly convinced with several other scholars that there's no underlying text. There's no underlying text. What do you think about the THC found in the ancient Jewish temple on the altar of incense? Yeah, you're talking about the cannabinoids found at Tel Arad. Um, what do I think about that? That there was cannabinoids found at Tel Arad. Yeah, I mean that that people were like using psychotropic drugs and religious rituals. Like, surprise, surprise. I don't think anyone in their right mind should not be terribly surprised about that. Um, we don't know to what degree, how much was being there. We just found trace elements at Tel Arad. Also, we don't know how typical the shrine at Tel Arad was. It's the only shrine we've recovered. It's the only Yahweh shrine, aside from the one at Tel Dan, that we've ever recovered. So we just don't know to what degree Tel Arad was typical, but it's a Yahwistic shrine, probably torn down by by Josiah or Hezekiah, probably Josiah, and yeah, um, so um, yeah, so that's it. I just like I think people want there to be some kind of like more deep thing about it, but I'm like, yeah, there's cannabinoids at Tel Arad, great. Like people were burning stuff and maybe hotboxing it in a Yahweh temple. Fantastic. I think that's the long and short of it. I don't know that it changes anything. I don't know that it changes anything. Um, and so, do you have actual esoteric understanding of the stuff you're talking about, or do you only have conceptual and historical knowledge? Who knows? Who knows? Do you realize how awesome your channel is? Thank you. Um, please keep up the great work. I will try. Thank you for your kind comments. Thank you for everyone for their kind comments. Folks are so nice, that just really, really, really kind. But yeah, the Telerod stuff. Um, At some point, I'll be doing an episode on, like I said, the origins of Yahweh, and the Telerod Shrine will certainly get a shakedown. Certainly get a shakedown. Thank you, Marco. Um, Someone mentioned the Order of Nine Angles. Yeah, what rat bastards they are. Yeah, fascist rat bastards. They can kiss off and die. So I don't know nothing. I mean, they're interesting. They're interesting, like from a academic perspective. But if they all fell off a cliff, I wouldn't mind. Wow. Okay. Question. I'm currently translating Paracelsus' Elements to Portuguese for my final paper. Wow. Good for you. I'm focusing the translations of the text to the Latin world and its reception. Is there any book you recommend? Oh, wow. This may be a good question also for Dana Trove. I'm not sure it's still around. I don't know. I've only ever read the Elements of Theology in the Clarendon version from the early 20th century, which I think is the only English well, there may be an early modern English translation, but that's the only academic one I know of in English. You may just want to check the bibliography in the Clarendon edition of Proclus's Elements of Theology and see what the bibliography looks like, and see if there's anything about the specific Latin reception of the text. But I don't know. That's a super technical question. I love those kinds of questions, but I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. I'm not sure. Dana Trail may know. So if he's still around, I'm not sure he still is. Yeah. Yeah, Dan would know probably better than me about that kind of stuff. But yeah, Dan, do you know if there's any other studies about the Latin reception of the Elements of Theology? Because it wasn't translated as Elements of Theology, right, into Latin. Like it was the book of something else, the book of the good or something. I forget how it was translated, how it was rendered into Latin, but it was but it was not that. So, but yeah, that's interesting. That's super fascinating. Just also and this is something also I think that Dan would know about too, is the reception of Hermetic texts coming from the Arabic world into Latin, which is a huge question that we really don't know to what degree those Arabic texts translated into Latin primed medieval Europeans for the arrival eventually of the Corpus Hermeticum. Just totally not studied, which is really fascinating that we have Hermetic texts that were very popular in the Middle Ages, ascribed to to Hermes Trismegistus, primarily being translated from the Arabic world and becoming the Latin Hermetica, and because of the splash made by the Marsilio Ficino's translation or whatever, they all get sort of shoved to the back end, and it's really great that folks like Dan and other folks are translating some of that material. So, that's fascinating. Yeah, the Liber de Calcis. Yep, yep. All right. Yeah, thanks, Dan. Yeah, the conspiracy stuff about Sumerian mythology is so terrible. It's so awful. I mean, like the amount of like people who just dwell on Sumerian mythology with no understanding of Sumerian mythology. Um, it's just like it's so. I don't know why the Sumerians get sort of singled out for like bullshit. Like it's so terrible. I feel so bad for how bad Sumerians have been dealt with the Anunnaki and all that stuff. I mean, it's so embarrassingly cringy. That if you know anything about Sumerian mythology, anything about Sumerian literature, and you actually read some of this cringy conspiracy theory stuff, it's like, oh, it's exasperating. It's positively exasperating. Do you think you'll ever do a video debunking for people that get in the BS from content creators like Robert Seffer? No, I just don't. I don't have any interest in. Yeah, I just don't have any interest in debunking people. I think people are going to make wackadoodle, crazy content, and my job is to make solid scholarly content. And there's always going to be an audience for people who want to watch wackadoodle, anti-Semitic, alien, lizard stuff. And I don't have any. I think trying to debunk that just further feeds into into it at some level. And so my task is not to debunk anybody. My task is to provide really solid information, scholarly information that I back up with sources that I give you access to, that enable you to fact check me. I give you the sources and say, this is what we have. And I think that's my task. I don't have any interest really in trying to debunk other people's content. I think that the best way of debunking bad content is by making good content. And by focusing on what people do badly, it just it kind of makes me reactive to them. And I don't want to do that. I'd rather say, no, I want to set the agenda. And the agenda is trying to create really solid scholarly content. And I think, I hope, and I could be wrong about this, maybe I'm being naive, but I think that people can recognize the difference. And when they see some of that nonsense, lizard Atlantis stuff, that has no evidence at all and has it's just conjecture and speculation and you know racist speculation at that, and they come to my channel and say there's not much in the way of speculation. He says this is what the manuscripts have, this is what we can know about them, and here's what we can read about them. And if you think that I'm wrong, well, go find evidence that I'm wrong. And I could very well be wrong. I'm very well likely to be wrong about stuff, and hopefully I'll admit it when I am wrong. But I think that it's what's important is not to engage in a debate with nonsense. What the task is to just be sensical. And if you can just be sensical, I think the nonsense eventually falls to the side. I think that the wheat and the chaff ultimately get separated. I do think they ultimately get separated. Um, all right. Elohim is plural, the gods. No, it's plural. I mean, it's plural. We don't know why it's plural. Why it is plural, but it is plural. Um, But yeah, it could be a hangover from henotheism. It could be the royal we. That there's a lot of debate about why the plural is plural, but there's no doubt about the fact that it's plural. Um, so yeah, but thank you for the donation. Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it's also the case that part of what's going on in a lot of these Hebrew Bible texts is that the divine council was a huge part of ancient Canaanite mythology, and the divine council is still seen in some psalms and some other sections. And it's almost certain that the Elohist source is probably relatively old and is probably still invoking some of that divine council stuff. And you're just getting plurals and we's and Yahweh talking to people because it's probably Yahweh talking to or El really talking to the divine council, which represents a completely different historical trend of Canaanite religious belief, right? Because again, El and Yahweh were at the very beginning not the same deity. They got welded together sometime in the Iron Age, but El pre-existed Yahweh in Canaan for centuries, all the way into the Bronze Age. It's Yahweh is the latecomer. Yahweh is the latecomer, and it's only in the Iron Age that Yahweh and El get conflated. Um, and we have distinct mythology about El. In fact, one of my favorite stories about El is that El went to a drinking party, got so drunk that he vomited and then passed out in his vomit. That's a story in the Canaanite mythology about El at the drinking party where El literally collapses into his own vomit at a drinking party. So this is a completely different or older form of mythology in which Yahwism is eventually imported sometime after the Bronze Age, early Iron Age, and Yahweh and El get welded together. But that process was a process, and it took time. And there's evidence of that process still certainly in the Hebrew Bible. Still certainly in the Hebrew Bible, still see it. Um, so Um, all right, let me go get some more questions. Um, See you, Dan. It's great to see you, man. Let's be in touch. Let's email. We should email back and we should get in touch via email. I want to be in touch and work together on something. I miss working with you. So let's do that. But yeah, thank you. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. Yeah, but like I said, I'm going to do an episode on the origins of Yahweh, and that's going to be an episode that will focus on the El and Yahweh and how they develop. So that's an interesting aspect of how all this stuff developed. Do you think the time people dedicate to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, etc., is detrimenting the minds in a serious way? Yeah, of course it is. It's like the Social Dilemma, that great documentary. There's no doubt that the internet's really it's great for some things and terrible for others. And I absolutely do think that. I mean, there's good psychological data to show that Facebook, Instagram is terrible for us. It's terrible for us psychologically. Um, Facebook knew that, especially for young girls, and basically covered it up. So, at least according to the whistleblower, which I have every reason to believe is true. That's why I don't have Instagram. Well, that's not true. I don't have Instagram because I don't take pictures of anything. Um, but will I be making a video about Burma? Yep, I will be making a video about Burma. I have one of his books over here I've been reading recently. So absolutely, absolutely. Jorge, what is your view of Carlos Suarez's Kabbalah books? I've never read them. I don't know anything about them. Sorry, Jorge. I don't know anything about his books. I should look into it. Look into it. Um, um, let me see. Let me scroll up and see some other stuff. Um, all right. I'm going to be on for about 10 more minutes, folks. Then I'm going to call it a day and go get ready for Shabbat. As someone interested in esoterica, religion, and mysticism, and also someone about to go into university, what advice do you have the best study along those interests? Yusuf, that's a great question. I would say one thing you'd want to get under your belt is some languages. I always encourage people to get a language under the belt, whether it's Latin or Greek or Hebrew or Arabic. So whatever branch of whatever you're interested in, get the classical language of that under your belt. So one, languages. You're going to need to get a pretty good mastery of languages. Two, I think you want to get a good historical understanding of the time period that you're working in. One of the things that I often find that is done poorly by many people interested in esotericism is they have no real historical analysis. There's no historiography at all. There's no real sense of what's going on and why people are doing what they're doing. So they just sort of like pick up the Greek magical papyri and start doing stuff with it. And there's no understanding of what Greco-Egypt actually was, or why it was like that, or how things existed, or what the material culture was, etc. So having a firm grasp on the historical conditions on the ground is a really important thing about understanding how these ideas developed. Um, and then I think the other thing I would recommend is methodology. Like, be exposed to a range of methodologies for understanding philosophical and religious material. Um, People tend to get really siloed in their methodologies. I mean, I'm guilty of that. But having a range of methodologies at your behest is really, really important for understanding the material. So, languages, history, methodology. Those are the three things I would focus on. If you get a really good grasp of those things, everything else is easy. Everything else is easy. It's so easy. But if you don't have a firm understanding of methodology, a firm understanding of historiography, and a firm understanding of languages, you're always going to be flying by the seat of your pants. Always. So I would highly recommend picking up those things. Thank you for I love these like emoji things. Thank you. That's very kind. Um, um, so what do I think about Rebbe Nachman of Breslov? Uh, he's super fascinating. I'm not super familiar with him, I have to say, but yeah, Rebbe Nachman of Breslov is fascinating. I mean, it's one of these Hasidic masters. So obviously he's super important. I can't say anything very specific about him, but yeah, he's really fascinating. Yeah. I have one of his books over here somewhere, but I haven't looked at it in a long time. Um, do I have a Patreon? Yes, you can find the link above. And yep, absolutely. If you want to support my work on Patreon, I'll give a pitch in just a minute if folks want to hear that here in just a few minutes. Um, where am I from? I'm from Mississippi. So yes, I have a Southern accent, a little bit of one. I have a little bit of one. Also, one of the questions I get, just FYI, before as I'm wrapping up the stream, one of the questions I actually get is, "What am I reading? Like, what do I read? Like, what does Justin read aside from esoterica stuff?" And if you're curious, I actually have just some examples of some things I'm reading. This is a book I'm reading called "Writing and Literacy in the World of Ancient Israel." This is just a basic analysis of everything we know about writing and literacy in ancient Israel. It's literally every single inscription that we have. Um, so it's just like like it's hardcore epigraphy and stuff. So this is really, really cool. Yeah, really like really granular analysis of like individual letter forms over history. This is really nerdy stuff. This is my favorite kind of stuff. So this is a thing I'm reading. Um, I'm reading also um, ancient Aramaic and Hebrew letters, which is this is basically the entire collection of letters written in ancient Canaan in Aramaic and in Hebrew. These are all stuff from not in the Bible. So these are like real people. What's really cool to actually like read this because it's like non-Bible people, and it's actual like some focus on actual people, real people in ancient Israel, which is really great. Another book I'm reading that folks might find interesting is this book, The Final Pagan Generation. This is an analysis of basically the end of paganism from a cultural perspective. So this is like what happened as Christianity was becoming triumphant, and and so this is interesting that this is a really great study about the end of paganism, which is a really really good book for folks out there, especially folks who identify as pagan. This is a really interesting glimpse into, in many ways, the end of that world and the rise of the Christian world, which is really really fascinating. Another book that I'm reading, I just finished reading actually, that's really really cool, is Dever's book, Has Archaeology Buried the Bible? This is a really short little read that just came out that's really fascinating. And what's really cool about this book is that it's basically the best summary that you can get of everything we know about the archaeology of ancient Israel versus what we know about the Bible. So this is what we know about from the archaeology. What does the archaeology tell us? What does the Bible tell us? And what can we learn about the combination of the two? And so it's a really cool summary of basically everything we've learned about archaeology, the archaeology of ancient Israel up till now. So that's kind of what I'm reading. If folks are interested in the things that I read that aren't esotericism related, but I guess they're kind of also a little bit esotericism related. So it's a cool book. Endeavor, you can read the longer book, Beyond the Texts, which is Dever's massive 847-page tome that does the same thing. Um, um, so that's also really, really fascinating. Dever's book is really great. It kind of made me not believe in Finkelstein's low chronology, actually. Like I used to be pretty convinced of I used to be pretty convinced of the minimalist camp, of the low chronology, and Dever has disabused me of the of the of the of the of the low chronology. For folks who know about the low chronology debate, as if I assume that people know about that stuff. All right. No, he is not a minimalist. Dever is definitely not a minimalist. I would say he's somewhere in the middle. And that's what's great about him. He's a very even-handed archaeologist and scholar of Bible. So he's really great that he's not a minimalist or a maximalist. He's really goes in the middle. Yeah, thank you for the comment about the Emerald Tablet. I really appreciate that. Thank you. That was a fun episode to make. I think people really have all kinds of strange misconceptions about the Emerald Tablet. And so it was a lot of fun to make an episode specifically on the Emerald Tablet to show just how much of a complicated mess that little text is, and that people have all kinds of bizarre interpretations of it based on nothing, basically. And so it's just, yeah, it's just, it's just kind of it shows you how much of a mess the Emerald Tablet is. All right, folks. I think I'm gonna start wrapping it up. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question. There's just so many. So I'm sorry if I didn't get to your questions, but I'll definitely be doing more live streams. As folks know, right, with the new Esoterica schedule is that I'll be doing 3 episodes of content. So 3 Fridays in a row, there'll be content. And then there'll be a live stream week where I'll take the week off, so to speak, and just do a live stream. That's this week. So we'll be doing that. But yeah, what I just want to say, again, I just really, it's like 300 people on the stream right now. Yeah, I just want to really to say how much I appreciate all of y'all. You guys just leave so many kind comments. You make this worth it. You make doing this weirdo stuff worth it. And I really just want to say how much I really, really appreciate your comments, that you like and you share the content, that you support my work on Patreon, that you provide support with PayPal and all kinds of stuff. You guys make this work. You guys make it possible for me to do this work. You guys make it possible for me to make this content. And I'm just super thankful for y'all. I'm very thankful for you all. I feel really blessed to be able to make this content, and that you allow me to do that and allow me to create this project that is Esoterica, creating this very weird little corner of knowledge and making it accessible to people. I just want to say how much I appreciate you enabling me, supporting me, and making this all work. It makes it's humbling, and I really, really, really appreciate it. So thank all y'all. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed also my little jaunt through some economics this time, and introduce you maybe to the Sefer Karnaim and this weird book on the Klipot and some other stuff. So, all right, folks. Well, I'm going to sign off and go downstairs and hang out with my kiddos and build a fire before Shabbat because it's cold here in Michigan, snow on the ground. I think we're going to get down to the single digits tonight, so it's going to be pretty chilly. So I'm gonna go build a fire and hang out with my kiddos and do that and settle in for a nice Shabbat. So again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all so much for making my work possible, for supporting me, for encouraging me, for the kind comments, the great questions. This is always a blast. I really appreciate it. So until next time. So next time, we'll be back to a live stream in about 3 weeks. Next week, if you're curious what the content is, esoteric Platonism. We're doing it, folks. We're doing some esoteric Platonism, and we're going to look at the theology of arithmetic. As if that couldn't be weirder enough, the theology of arithmetic, maybe written by Iamblichus. So we're going to look at the esoteric dimension of Platonism and how that esoteric dimension of Platonism led to an esoteric understanding of arithmetic, of mathematics. So Platonism, some Pythagoreanism, some Iamblichus. We're doing it. We're doing it next week. So dial back in next week for esoteric arithmetic, as if that's not weird enough. So some esoteric arithmetic, a mystical arithmetic next week, folks. All right, y'all. Absolutely. Thank y'all so much, and I will see y'all on the weird internets next week for esoteric arithmetic. And until then, hope all of you are doing well. Hope you guys stay safe, and take care of yourself. Take some time to yourself. Love those that love you. And I'll see y'all in a few weeks. Thank you so much. Bye.